Hello and welcome. I'm James Azimoha and you're watching A News. Let's see your headlines. Russia and Ukraine both report attacks on military targets and energy facilities. Hundreds arrested in France after World Champions League celebrations. And WHO chief visits the center of the Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo. A new wave of heavy cross-border strikes has hit military and energy infrastructure in both Russia and Ukraine. Moscow claims to have targeted Ukrainian military airfields, while Kyiv confirms it successfully struck strategic targets deep inside Russian territory.
A weekend of escalating aerial warfare. Moscow says its long-range precision weapons hit Ukrainian airfields and fuel depots. The Russian Defense Ministry also claims to have targeted foreign mercenaries in nearly 150 areas, while reporting the downing of over 350 Ukrainian drones in just 24 hours. But Kyiv is striking back deep inside Russia. Ukrainian drone strikes targeted strategic assets in the Rostov and Krasnodar regions, hitting fuel facilities and military airfields.
There were strikes on Russian Tu-1, 142 military aircraft, and an Iskander launcher was also hit. There were also hits on oil targets. The armed forces of Ukraine struck the Rostov region, and the security service of Ukraine struck the Krasnodar region. This is what truly affects the Russian potential for aggression.
The threat of further escalation remains high. Citing official intelligence data, President Zelensky warned that Moscow is preparing a massive new missile strike, adding that international partners have already raised the issue with the Kremlin. To counter the threat, Kyiv is now moving to accelerate high-level military and diplomatic negotiations with both Europe and the United States.
We are trying to activate all channels of communication with the United States of America. We expect that there will be visits and negotiations at the team level. There will be new negotiations in Europe as well, and we are currently preparing for them.
Back on the ground, the immediate impact is devastating. A Russian drone strike in Zaporizhzhia killed a railway driver, while a separate drone explosion at the Moscow-controlled Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant damaged the facility's exterior walls.
Now, the U.S. military says 3 men have been killed in a strike on a vessel in the Eastern Pacific. Officials say the boat was linked to drug trafficking routes as operations of this kind continue in the region. U.S. Southern Command says intelligence confirmed the vessel was transiting along narco-trafficking routes and engaged in those operations. 3 men were killed in the action, which the command described as narco-terrorists. No U.S. military personnel were harmed. It's the second such strike in as many days, according to officials, as similar operations have been reported over recent months. Now, the United States and Iran appear close to extending the ceasefire, but key disagreements are still preventing a final agreement. Both sides say discussions are continuing, while people in Tehran remain deeply skeptical about Washington's intentions.
A possible agreement between the United States and Iran remains unfinished despite weeks of negotiations aimed at extending a ceasefire reached in April. US President Donald Trump met his national security team at the White House on Friday to decide whether to approve a draft framework that could extend the truce for another 60 days and allow further talks. However, the meeting ended without a final decision. The United States wants Iran to guarantee it will never develop a nuclear weapon, reopen the Strait of Hormuz to unrestricted shipping, and allow the removal of its stockpile of enriched uranium. Tehran says no agreement has been finalized. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Esmail Baghaei said exchanges between the two sides are continuing, but questioned whether Washington would honor any commitments. Iran also insists its nuclear program is for peaceful purposes. In Tehran on Friday, supporters of Iran's leadership expressed little confidence in the negotiations.
If what he is saying is true, it shows that his blockade has failed, and what he had in mind did not happen. He could not overcome us. And in order not to be humiliated any further, he says we are ending the blockade. Now we have to see how truthful he is.
They will definitely not remain committed just like before. We have no hope in this matter either. We will follow our own path.
Our word is our leader's word. The Strait of Hormuz must remain closed. Until our leader announces otherwise, we will say the same.
The ceasefire took effect on April 8th after 40 days of fighting triggered by US and Israeli strikes on Iran. Since then, mediators have been working to secure a broader understanding between the two sides.
Now, Beijing and Brussels are discussing a new trade and investment consultation mechanism to stabilize economic ties. The announcement follows a high-level European Commission debate on EU-China relations. China's Ministry of Commerce described the EU as a key partner and called on Brussels to uphold WTO rules and reject protectionism. However, Beijing also issued a warning, saying that if the European Union proceeds with unilateral restrictions, China will respond with what it called effective measures to protect its economic interests. Now, Paris Saint-Germain's victory over Arsenal in the Champions League final triggered police response across France, with authorities reporting disturbances as fans celebrated deep into the night. A victory parade is planned in Paris on Sunday with President Emmanuel Macron.
French Interior Minister Laurent Nunez said over 400 people had been arrested nationwide by early Sunday, including over 200 in Paris, after PSG supporters gathered to celebrate the club's win over Arsenal in the Budapest final. Authorities said 7 police officers were injured, one seriously in the city of Agen. Incidents were reported in around 15 cities, including Rennes, Clermont-Ferrand, Grenoble, and Toulouse, with damage reported to businesses, vehicles, and public property. In Paris, thousands gathered on the Champs-Élysées, where police seized fireworks and pyrotechnic devices and made arrests. Officers also responded to disturbances in Toulouse, where storefronts were damaged before crowds were dispersed with tear gas. Despite the incidents, celebrations continued in the capital, with the Eiffel Tower lit in PSG colours and supporters gathering near the Trocadero. Paris Saint-Germain retained the Champions League title after beating Arsenal 4-3 in a penalty shootout following a 1-1 draw at Budapest's Puskás Arena.
Now, extreme heat is sweeping across parts of South and Southern Europe, with temperatures climbing far above normal for this time of the year. Spain and France are among the countries feeling the impact as residents struggle to cope with unusually early summer-like conditions.
Extreme heat is affecting large parts of southern Europe, with temperatures rising well above seasonal averages and prompting weather warnings across several countries. In Spain, the southern city of Seville was among the hardest hit, where temperatures reached around 37 degrees Celsius on Saturday. Spain's National Weather Agency issued yellow-level heat alerts across much of the country as conditions approached midsummer levels. Residents and visitors in Seville tried to cope with the intense heat. Some said the sudden rise in temperatures felt unusual for this time of year, with many adjusting their daily routines to avoid the worst of the sun.
I walk in the shade, drink plenty of water, and sometimes I take a spray bottle with me to splash water on myself because it's so hot, and I go to cool places, so I just stay at home.
I really can't stand the heat in summer. It's awful. But anyway, it's just a matter of turning the air conditioning on a bit at night, letting some air in, opening the windows in the morning, and closing them properly in the afternoon.
Similar conditions have also been reported in parts of France where recent days have brought record or near-record May temperatures. In cities such as Bordeaux, people have been seeking relief in fountains and shaded public spaces as the heat wave intensifies. Meteorologists say the early season heat is part of a broader warming trend, with forecasts suggesting global temperatures may remain near record highs in the coming years.
Now, the United States, the United Kingdom and Australia are working together to develop unmanned underwater vehicles under the AUKUS Defense Pact. It's seen as a response to China's growing power in the Indo-Pacific region. Meantime, China has called the AUKUS Pact dangerous and warned that it could increase an arms race in the region. UK Defence Secretary John Healey said the program will help the countries develop new military technologies more quickly. However, he added that the progress in AUKUS has been slower than expected so far. The Defence Pact was formed in 2021. Now, the WHO's chief has visited the center of the Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of the Congo as health officials work to contain the virus. With cases arising, authorities are urging communities to follow prevention measures.
World Health Organization Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus arrived in Bunia, the capital of the northeastern Ituri province and the epicenter of the Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, on Saturday. Tedros met government officials, community leaders, humanitarian agencies and health partners during his visit, stressing that public confidence and community participation would be essential to ending transmission. Speaking at a joint press conference, Tedros highlighted the importance of building community trust and ensuring safe burials to prevent further spread.
Certain practices, including touching the bodies of those who have died from Ebola, can spread the virus further. While we grieve for those we have lost, we must do everything we can so that we do not lose another and get into a cycle of grief. Protecting each other, even in grief, is one of the hardest and most important things we can do.
As the WHO chief visits DR Congo, Congolese authorities say the number of confirmed Ebola cases reached 225 on Friday, nearly double the 121 cases reported 2 days earlier. The rapid spread of Ebola in the Democratic Republic of the Congo has created a deeply alarming situation, medical charity Médecins Sans Frontières has warned. Prevention and control measures are being stepped up in medical centres across eastern DR Congo as the country struggles to contain the outbreak.
The major difficulty we face is the lack of resources. We use our own resources and try to do what is possible. We are distributing hand-washing kits and raising awareness so that our communities can take care of themselves.
While following prevention measures remains critical in the fight against Ebola, securing the resources needed to sustain the response continues to be a major challenge.
Colombians are preparing for the presidential elections this weekend, with opinion surveys pointing towards a likely runoff as voters remain divided over the country's political future.
With Election Day approaching, voters in Bogotá are weighing competing visions for Colombia's future, with issues ranging from security and the economy to environmental policy dominating public debate. Supporters of right-wing candidate Abelardo de la Espriella say the country needs stronger leadership to tackle crime and reverse the direction taken under the current government.
I am firm for the homeland, Ed's note, referring to right-wing candidate Abelardo de la Espriella's campaign slogan, mainly because I disagree with the current government's ideas and the ideals this government is presenting. Secondly, because of my parents' pensions. They've worked so hard that putting their pensions at risk with the current government, I think, is inconsiderate. Plus, I think what Abelardo de la Espriella says is important, about standing firm against crime and the criminal underworld.
Many of his backers argue that public security and economic stability should be the next government's top priorities.
The right, the left have already ruled. So Colombia urgently needs a change from these traditional parties. I hope, and most Colombians trust, that this country will change so that social investment comes, and so that we provide security and apply a firm hand. This country needs a firm hand.
Others are backing candidates aligned with President Gustavo Petro's political movement, pointing to environmental protection and social policies as key concerns.
My vote goes to candidate Ivan Cepeda, mainly because I like the environment. My country is a world engine of biodiversity, And I think this candidate is important because he thinks about the environment and he opposes fracking compared to other candidates.
Yet not all Colombians are convinced by the political choices on offer. Some voters say years of unfulfilled promises have left them increasingly disillusioned with the political system. Opinion polls suggest no candidate is likely to secure an outright majority in the first round, and setting the stage for what could be a closely contested runoff later this month.
Now, investors are watching the return of the so-called bond vigilantes as rising yields put pressure on governments. The 5% level is emerging as a key psychological threshold in global bond markets. It comes as concerns grow over fiscal stability in major economies. Here's more.
Why does 5% matter so much?
Markets continue to have a little bit of weakness here.
At first, it sounds small, but in global finance, 5% can shake governments. An opinion article by Kaiser Nawab for the News Opinion section drew attention to one important number: the yield on the 30-year US Treasury bond. That yield recently crossed 5%. This is not just a Wall Street figure. US Treasury bonds are treated as one of the safest assets in the world. So when their long-term yield rises, it becomes a signal. Borrowing is getting more expensive. Debt is harder to manage. And investors are demanding more return to lend money to governments.
30-year above 5%, almost 5.2% today. That should make people a little bit jittery.
For the United States, this matters because its debt is already huge, and interest payments are now taking a larger share of the budget.
Everything in the market is priced on some premise of a risk-free rate.
For the rest of the world, it matters because US rates influence global borrowing costs. When America pays more to borrow, many other countries may also face higher costs, especially developing economies that borrow in dollars. This is why 5% is more than a number. It is a warning. The age of cheap money may be ending, and bond markets are telling governments something simple: spend carefully, because lenders are watching.
All right, now let's take a look at the key stories shaping the region. At least 8 people were killed and 33 others injured after a passenger bus belonging to a tourism company crashed and caught fire in Denizli province, southwestern Turkey. The bus carrying 40 people went out of control and crashed into barriers, with the impact causing the vehicle to catch on fire. Emergency response teams, including firefighters and police, were dispatched to the scene. The injured were transported to hospitals in the region for treatment. Due to the accident, traffic toward Denizli was closed for about 4 hours. The road was reopened after the bus was removed. Now, at least 22 people were killed and 36 others injured when a truck carrying Afghan refugees overturned in eastern Afghanistan's Lagam province. Officials say the driver reportedly fell asleep at the wheel, causing the vehicle to veer off the road and crash. 10 children and 5 women were among the victims. The passengers were among thousands of Afghans recently returning from Pakistan amid ongoing deportations. Several of the injured remain in critical condition. Now, Pakistan's Deputy Prime Minister Mohammad Ishaq Dar says Islamabad will not normalize relations with Israel until an independent Palestinian state is established. He made the remarks at a press conference after meeting U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio in Washington in response to U.S. President Donald Trump's call for Muslim countries to join the Abraham Accords. Saudi sources also said the country's position has not changed and emphasized the need for a path towards a Palestinian state. The Abraham Accords were signed in 2020 with U.S. mediation, normalizing relations between Israel and several Arab states. Now, Syria's civil defense officers were on ground to assist families affected by widespread flooding in eastern Syria after the Euphrates River burst its banks on Saturday. Officials say more than 500 hectares of land have been submerged, with Deir al-Zor among the worst-hit areas. According to a residents' account, the water level had risen sharply, causing a makeshift bridge over the river to collapse, which forced people to cross the river using small boats. However, officials warn that using small boats is unsafe and poses serious risks to civilians. Uzbekistan has signed investment and export agreements worth more than $3.5 billion with Chinese companies aimed at supporting major infrastructure and development projects across the capital. A-News' correspondent in Tashkent brings us the report.
Tashkent has secured more than $3.5 billion in investment and export agreements during the Uzbek-Chinese Inter-Regional Forum in Xi'an. According to the city administration, the deals cover transport, urban infrastructure, construction and industrial projects. The largest allocations include $1 billion for road infrastructure, new bus rapid transit lanes and overpasses, a further $1 billion for transport and social infrastructure, and $500 million for residential developments in renovation areas. Other projects include $400 million for drainage, irrigation and rainwater management systems, $150 million each for decorative stone and ceramic production, $100 million for the development of branded 24-hour streets, and $50 million for smart waste sorting equipment. The Yangiavlot industrial zone will also see $130 million in cooperation agreement. Export deals were also signed covering Uzbek jewelry products worth $150 million, along with cotton yarn and silver concentrate. Officials say the project will be financed by the Chinese side without the use of state budget funds or government guarantees, supporting the long-term development of the capital. It is Sivil Rajab reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A-News.
All right, that's all we have for now. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to A-News.